Hello, everyone. This is Eleanor Rigby. I'm sitting here today with a small, chipped teacup in my hands. It's been in my cabinet for nearly 60 years, and every time I touch the handle, I can feel the ghost of my mother's kitchen in 1965. I remember the smell of burnt toast and cheap perfume, and I remember the weight of the words she spoke to me that morning. If I hadn't listened to what she told me back then, I truly believe I would have lost everything that matters to me today. Time moves so quickly, and before you know it, the face in the mirror is one you barely recognize, but the truths of the heart, those never seem to wrinkle. Before I tell you this story, please subscribe. I want to pass this wisdom down before I'm gone, so you don't make the same mistakes I did when I was young and headstrong. It was June of 1965. I was 22 years old, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about love. I was wearing a yellow shift dress that I'd sewn myself, and I was crying hard enough to fog up my glasses. I had been married to Arthur for exactly 14 months, and I was convinced I had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. Arthur was a good man, but he was quiet, and in my youthful vanity, I mistook his silence for a lack of passion. I wanted fireworks every night, and all I was getting was a man who came home from the garage, washed the grease off his hands, and asked what was for supper. I had packed a small suitcase and driven over to my mother's house. She didn't say a word when I walked in. She just poured me a cup of tea in this very cup. We sat at her formica table, the linoleum floor peeling at the corners, and the hum of the old refrigerator filling the silence. I told her Arthur didn't understand me. I told her he wasn't romantic. I told her that men were impossible, selfish creatures who didn't know how to value a woman's soul. My mother let me talk until I ran out of breath. Then she leaned forward, her eyes as sharp as I'd ever seen them. She said, "Eleanor, sit up and listen to me. I'm going to tell you something about men that was true when your grandmother was a girl, and it's going to be true long after I am buried in the ground." She told me that a man's love isn't found in the poems he writes or the flowers he buys when he's done something wrong. She said, "A man is a builder, Eleanor. If he loves you, he will spend his whole life trying to build a wall around you to keep the world from hurting you. You're looking for a performance, but you should be looking for the foundation." I didn't want to hear it then. I wanted her to tell me I deserved better, that I should go find a poet or a rebel. But she looked me dead in the eye and said, "A man's silence isn't emptiness. It's often the weight of the responsibility he's carrying for you. Don't you dare mistake his steady hand for a cold heart." Back in the 60s, we didn't talk about feelings the way people do now. We didn't have therapists on every corner or books explaining the male psyche. We had observation. We had endurance. My mother told me that a man needs to feel like your hero, even when he's just a tired human being. She told me that if I spent my life looking for what he wasn't giving me, I would go blind to everything he was doing. I went back to Arthur that night. I didn't tell him where I'd been, but I watched him. I watched the way he checked the oil in my car every Saturday without me asking. I watched the way he winced when he thought I wasn't looking because his back ached from leaning over engines all day. I started to see the wall my mother talked about. He wasn't giving me sonnets, he was giving me security. He was giving me a life built on the bedrock of showing up. In all my 80 years, I have seen the world change in ways I never imagined. I've seen the rise of the internet, the fall of empires, and the way dating has turned into a game of swiping and toko, discarding. But the truth my mother gave me in my 965 remains unshakable. Young people today might not understand this, But love isn't a feeling you have. It's a decision you make every single morning. You wake up and you choose to see the best in the person sleeping next to you, even when they're snoring or when they've forgotten your anniversary for the third year in a row. Experience has taught me that the spark everyone is so worried about is just a match. It burns bright and fast, and then it's gone. What you need is the slow burning love that keeps the house warm all through the winter. You have to understand that men, generally speaking, are taught to hide their vulnerabilities. They are taught that their value lies in what they provide and how they protect. When a man feels like he is failing at that, he withdraws. My mother told me, when he pulls away, don't chase him with demands, pull him back with grace. It sounded like surrender to me when I was 22. Now, at 80, I know it was actually the ultimate power. It's the power of creating a home where a man feels safe enough to be weak. I promise you, if you are looking for a man to complete you or to be your constant source of entertainment, you are going to be lonely for a very long time. But if you look for a man who values loyalty, who honors his word, and who works until his hands are sore to give you a future, you have found a king. Arthur and I had hard years. In the late 70s, when the economy crashed and we almost lost the house, it wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest year of my life. We screamed, we cried, and there were nights when we slept on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to let even a toe touch the other. But I remembered what my mother said about the wall. I looked at Arthur and I saw a man who was terrified he couldn't protect me from the bank. Instead of blaming him, I walked over and I put my hand on his shoulder. I told him we could live in a tent as long as we were together. I saw his whole body relax. That was the moment our marriage truly began. 15 years after we said I do. Think about that. Think about the people you've walked away from because the vibe wasn't right or because they didn't say the perfect thing at the perfect time. We are all so fragile, and we are all so desperate to be seen. But to be seen, you have to be still. You have to stop running toward the next shiny thing and start planting roots in the soil you've already got. Modern dating seems so loud to me. Everyone is shouting about their needs and their boundaries and their deal breakers. But where is the talk of sacrifice? Where is the talk of endurance? My late husband used to say that a marriage is just two people who refuse to give up at the same time. He was right. I look at the young men today and I see them struggling to find their place. They are told they shouldn't be masculine in the old ways, but then they are criticized for not being strong enough. It's a confusing time, but the secret my mother shared hasn't changed. A man still wants to be respected. He still wants to be the one who provides some form of shelter, whether that's emotional, physical, or financial, and a woman who can see that effort, even when it's clumsy, even when it's quiet, is a woman who will never be without love. It wasn't easy. It was never easy. But the things that are easy are rarely worth having. I kept that chipped teacup all these years to remind me of the day I almost walked away from the greatest gift of my life. I kept it to remind me that a mother's wisdom is often a bitter tea that cures a fevered heart. In all my 80 years, I've learned that the perfect man is a myth created by people who want to sell you something. But a good man, a man who stays, a man who tries, a man who builds, that is a miracle. As I look back on my life with Arthur, I don't remember the fights. I don't remember the silence that once made me cry. I remember the way he held my hand when our first child was born. I remember the way he looked at me when my hair turned gray as if I were still that girl in the yellow shift dress. I remember the wall he built around us, and I am so glad I stayed inside of it. I wish for you a love that is boring in its consistency. I wish for you a partner who doesn't just make your heart race, but who makes your soul feel quiet. I wish for you the wisdom to see the foundation even when you're looking for the fireworks. Loyalty isn't a cage, it's a sanctuary. Thank you for listening to An Old Soul. Subscribe, share this with someone you love, and cherish them while they are here. Life is shorter than a summer afternoon, and you don't want to spend it wondering what might have been if you'd only stayed. Good night, and God bless.